If you cruise to Alaska on Holland America, you'll be offered the option of a land excursion as well. They call this a cruise tour, and it goes to Denali National Park. At least two other cruise lines offer the same kind of thing.
The end of our time together, okay?
With these cruise tours come two different ways to see the park itself. The first one we'll focus on is by bus. A good bus with a good guide is a great way to see the park, but it doesn't guarantee good weather.
Run services in the park, but we both have a very similar mission.
There is but one paved road that goes through the park.
And the Alaska Range, everyone, is a 500-mile arch.
Given the cold climate, it doesn't take a lot of change of altitude before you're hitting the tree line. Here you can see the trees becoming more sparse.
As we get in deeper, you will see it gets more colorful today.
We were traveling in mid-August, and the day that we picked for the bus tour was somewhat rainy, somewhat cloudy, maybe not the best day to see the mountains. Of course, keep in mind when I say the day we picked, we were there for one whole day. The cruise tour doesn't stay very long. You can pick 1, 2, or 3 days to be in the area. Soon we reached the entrance and ranger station.
Welcome to Denali National Park and Preserve. My name is Joe, and today you're going to get an opportunity to see...
Well, I could hear him. That was a ranger welcoming us into the park. This point, about 13 miles down the road, is where all private car traffic has to stop.
Chances are you would have gotten turned around back there. You do need to be on one of these buses or have a special permit to get past mile marker 15.
Turns out the driver has a scope with a camera and can broadcast into the bus what she sees. That was a willow ptarmigan, the state bird of Alaska. Despite what you might assume, it's not the eagle. Because of the cloudy skies, it became evident right away that we were not going to see Mount Denali. Only about 30% of the visitors ever do. A good number of the souvenirs from this area say Denali 30% Club, meaning you actually got to see the mountain. Of course, that mountain is not the only thing to see.
They don't really have much in the way of creature comforts.
By the way, remember I mentioned it was August? Check out these hikers. The evening of this tour, it snowed at the higher elevations around where we were.
It's a true story, and the premise is this young guy, he wants to live out in the wilderness, so he comes up to Alaska, into the interior here, and he crosses this very river, the Teklanika River, just as it leaves the park in the northeastern corridor of the park. He was able to live out in the wilderness quasi-successfully for a few months, and then he realized he wanted to come back. But once he made up his mind to do that, the river had changed too much and he wasn't able to cross it. So ultimately this river was his demise.
If you do take this tour, you'll find that there is one very good rest stop. It's a scenic spot, and it's probably also the only spot that you're going to get off the bus, so enjoy it. When most folks come to Denali, they want to see the mountain, but they also want to see the animals. Now, there's nothing wrong with the willow ptarmigan, but by the animals we really mean grizzly bears, other kinds of bears, moose, those kinds of things, big ones that you can see from a bus window.
To the south, what's happening is there's still a big glacier, and it's still moving. And as it's moving, it's grinding the ground beneath of it. And
for now, though, we had to be satisfied by learning about glacial silt in the river. Our guide, also our driver, was remarkably well informed about the entire park.
With the influx of rain or with snow melting, the ribbons might get bigger, they might get deeper or intersect more, but it'll never actually fill all the way up with water.
We've been told ahead of time that because of a landslide, our bus could only go about a third of the way into the park. So after about 20-some miles, we would be turning around and coming back on the same road. Remember, there's only one road.
Buses that actually go all the way to the end of the road and turn around. That's like 11 to 12 hour tour for the guests. And then there's the green buses. They have different.
The park did have its colorful plants, and the most colorful was the fireweed.
Showing us some love here. Fireweed is not our state flower. Our park is open every single day of the year. So.
I was about to make a dumb joke about seeing a cat, but hold on just a minute.
To her uterine wall.
Seeing those bears was really cool.
Where can we see Denali? On a clear day, this is another spot out at 11 o'clock is the direction where Denali sits. So take a picture.
And here's another spot where we weren't seeing the mountain.
Of the nursery band, which is just the females and the lambs, the ewes and the lambs, and then they all raise the lambs together at that point.
Here's where the driver's scope comes into play. On the other side of the bus was a doll sheep. We couldn't see it, so the driver tried to call it up on the screen. We were not even halfway through the trip and the windows were beginning to get pretty splattered with mud. But we did reach the turnaround point, and logically that meant I would see the things this time that I couldn't see last time for being on the other side of the bus.
The stairs just make it easier. You can see the stairs if you look over your right shoulders. Just makes it easier for people to access this closed area. Now you can hike around the landslide closure. It's a 5-mile detour. You can ride your bikes around it. It's the same amount of detour, but it's very challenging terrain. So I rode my bike around it last year with a couple girlfriends. We spent the night out there.
Good news though, the window's open.
You can see the road better now. If you look over your right shoulders at like 4 o'clock, you can see it disappearing around the bench and dust. It's it's like slang for saying like summer's over, summer's terminated, it's winter now.
Just to reiterate, the guide was fantastic, but I'm not going to give you full audio on anything that she's covering. That just feels wrong to do. About now we were coming up on where we'd seen the grizzlies, and I was going to be on the correct side of the bus this time. Wonder if we'd see them. That's an emphatic yes.
Do you see that hump between her shoulder blades? Exactly. Yeah, probably.
She's running now. If not friend, why friend can't?
And the view from the scope was really good this time.
Must be some good berries.
Must be.
We resumed our bus ride back out of the park.
And bloody sheets, and what's left is exposed bone. And then from there, after the rut, after the mating season, the animals will drop those antlers, usually one at a time. Now, the antler sheds are to be left here in the park. We do not take them out of the park. They are part of this ecosystem because they are chock full of calcium. It's a good food for other animals. Lights wake-up calls as well. So you can tell your front desk, I want one of those Northern Lights wake-up calls.
Even when there was not much to see, there was plenty to see. But the driver would use those moments to tell us things like how to be sure that you're awakened if there's a chance to see the northern lights at your hotel.
And I know when you are.
It was also enjoyable when everybody was just quiet.
Wow, slowly but surely we have been seeing the animals out here, huh? So I'm glad we got that caribou in just then. I can't imagine what else you'd want to see. Just can't even think of any other animal. I don't even know.
A moose. We still haven't seen a moose.
Oh, a moose. Right.
But at this point, we were only about 2 or 3 miles from the entrance to the park, so of course we finally found a moose.
If you're interested, it's a little bit different vibe. We do not have the place to ourselves, so I'm gonna kind of creep through. I have quite a bit of traffic behind me.
Well, time flies when you're seeing moose. That took about 4 hours, but here we are on the way back out of the park. No Mount Denali, but a lot of interesting things to see. Definitely worth it. And the next day we'd have another shot at seeing it on the McKinley Explorer. If you saw my video about getting from Whittier to Denali by bus, you can imagine that I was looking forward to going back by train. And as you're going to see, this is about as special as it gets. The amazingly attentive staff greeted us as we entered the train. This was our bartender. Every car had its own. And once again, we had a fantastic guide. These people are just really good at their jobs. You can tell they enjoy being in Alaska. So I settled in with the fancy coffee that was delivered to my seat and began to see the views. There are supposedly 4 different spots on this train ride where you can sometimes see Denali. So here was my shot. I had intentionally not purchased any of the 30% Club souvenirs. First of all, that would have been a lie, and secondly, I didn't want to jinx my chances. Right off the bat, there was room for cautious optimism. The skies were pretty clear. It had snowed the night before, believe it or not. But Denali can generate its own weather and is often obscured by clouds. As you can see, this train had the observation windows in the upper deck where we were seated.
I do not want you to be shy. In fact, I want you to yell. You can yell stop. Nothing will happen. But you will get our attention, and that is what I want you to do. And I want you to do things in this order.
As we traveled south on the train, it wasn't so much that we were traveling through Denali National Park as we were looking at it. And that's when I realized that I was on the quote-unquote wrong side of the train, because if the mountain was to be seen, it would be seen on the right side. I was seated on the left side. This blunder wasn't too tragic because I had a great view of the Nenana River, and as you'll see, it didn't really matter. I could look out of either side of the train. These were, after all, observation cars, and every passenger had the same objective: to see the scenery. One way to see the scenery was from the viewing platform, which was on the back of our car. Passengers tended to come and go from that area. As a result, everybody got a chance. And this is where you'd go if you wanted the classic train going round the bend photo, but I never got a real good one. I'm still here. I'm just enjoying the scenery. I mean, this isn't too bad of a train going around the bend photo now, is it? There are souvenirs sold on the train, so I gave them a quick look before I headed back upstairs to my seat.
Once you reach the summit, the clouds would part, the sun would shine, and you could triumphantly stand on top of Panorama Mountain. You could then make that very slippery descent back down, and after climbing down that mountain, one time I would be at the base to greet you. I would not be there to congratulate you. I would tell you to climb.
As we passed the rivers and streams made silty by glacial activity, we were reaching the point where if we were going to see Denali, we'd see Denali. About now, I realized I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to see, but I hope that I saw something. As you would expect, though, it turns out if you see Denali, you know it.
Simply as clear as it can get.
That's the mountain. It's hard to tell just how tall it is because of, get this, the curvature of the earth. That's how far away it is. And that's why some of the considerably shorter mountains in the foreground appear to be almost as tall. They're not. 20,310 feet of Denali. Our guide told us this was probably the best viewing day all season, which made him hopeful we would have good views from other locations. And we did. Between the trees and the mountains in the foreground, it was going to be a little while before we had another good shot at seeing Denali.
We have a cabin that's out there by Hurricane Creek. Do you think that your daughter and some of her friends would want to spend a weekend at the cabin?
Then came the time to cross a rather impressive gorge.
Even the freight trains slow down to 10 miles per hour. And we've stopped on a 100-year-old, 3-year-old structure. Very nice, very nice.
It was indeed a long way down. This was not a very long stop, but I can't say that about the second one. I'll tell you about that in a bit, but for now, let's enjoy this view. There's a couple other quick looks at Denali. Now, who's hungry for lunch? Under the observation floor of the car, there is a full dining car with a kitchen. But even from this lower level, there were things to look at out the windows.
One cheeseburger and one turkey sandwich. You want to do on sourdough?
I legitimately couldn't get over what good views we were having, and these were not common. Or perhaps I should say I was told these are not common. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience for most folks, including me. I'll have nothing to compare it with.
Perfectly beautiful day, and then the mountain.
You can hear how excited all the passengers were.
We're going to be completely out of service for almost 3 hours. Yeah, they told us that earlier. Yeah, Dylan's good about all that stuff.
I won't lie, the mountain is the main attraction even if you don't want it to be, but everything else is really interesting. I think there's sort of a scale as to how different where you are looks from where you live. This looked very different.
Is it really worth all the...
Oh, and there's lunch. A good hamburger. These rivers derive their flow from melting glaciers, and you can really see the silt in this one. We were approaching Talkeetna, a small town at the confluence of three rivers. After having been on the train for about 3 hours and after having been fed, I think people were more content to just look out the window and watch. Even the guide, who knew when to talk and when not to talk, was not talking. Now I mentioned there was a second time when we stopped, and this is the second time, and this was the view for about 45 minutes. There was another train coming from the other direction. We had to wait to let it pass. So let's take a look at the seats that you're going to be in for about 6 hours if you take this train. They're very comfortable with a footrest, tray table, PowerPoint. I think I must be the wrong height for these footrests. There are two ways to get from the lower level to the upper level of the train car. First is this spiral staircase, and the second is this elevator. The bar remains open for nearly the entire trip, and while you do pay for the drinks, the prices are reasonable.
There's drinks, the food downstairs, and when I know more, I'll definitely tell you more, but we'll definitely know once a train passes by us, whatever that may be, that it will be our church roll. But that's what we've heard from dispatch, which is the Alaska Railroad, and that's what's out in front of us. So a bit of a hold here, but like I said, we might as well eat, drink, and be merry. Those are counterpart train. These are friends.
And there goes the other train the other direction.
They got one paper scissors. They want to play rock, paper, scissors. Me? All right, let's do this. Well, we got a rock, paper, scissors game going on.
And we were back underway.
All part of the adventure. Yep.
Okay, sir, did you get a low note? Do you want to hear it?
They haven't passed out my mail yet.
Oh. Okay, maybe, okay.
Not that I'll tell you.
You're sharing with all of us.
We'll see. We'll see how appropriate it is.
Hotel on your left-hand side with 88 rooms. The Curry Hotel. President Warren G. Harding spent 2 nights in that hotel 101 years ago in 1923. He was coming up to the territory of Alaska to drive a golden spike into the ground to commemorate the completion of the Alaska Railroad. But when World War II struck, people stopped stopping at the Curry Hotel. There was no business. And after World War II, the diesel locomotive was introduced to Alaska, and trains then could go farther and faster and past Curry, no longer stopping in.
Yeah, that story ends with the hotel burning to the ground, maybe suspiciously. Two of the 4 places to see the mountain along this route had indeed given us good views. What about the third one? Did we see anything? Sure was clear. Unsurprisingly, that's a yes.
And then we're going to roll past that town, and just a mile outside of the Talkeetna Depot.
This may have been my favorite view of them all. We stopped briefly in Talkeetna to discharge maybe 6 passengers, and then we were underway again. And right after that, we got our 4th great view of the mountain. And okay, I was wrong. This is my favorite view. They're all my favorite view.
Concluding our brochure day of Alaska. These are the photos that they're going to use for next year's pamphlets to come.
Our guide drew me a quick little map so I would remember which mountain was which. Then it was past some forest fire damage and on our way to our destination of Anchorage. After 6 hours of excellent guide work and after 6 hours of excellent bartending, it was easy to leave a tip.
And then after that's done, we'll start.
And that's just how cool the Alaska Railroad is from Denali to Anchorage. I hope you liked my video, I hope you'll like my video, and I would really like it if you subscribe to my channel. But for now, goodbye.
Your buses are here.
30% Club.